I remember this headline came out about how having a bachelor's of fine arts was like the most useless degree that somebody could have. And I had a decision to make. I could either listen to that and decide that I would not be hireable, or I could do something about it. So I decided to make my own job.
Hi, and welcome to the Bouncing Back podcast. I'm your host, Melissa McCurley, and after my own journey with autoimmune disease, I created this podcast to share tools, strategies, and inspiring stories for other professionals who are navigating life and business with chronic illness. If you haven't yet joined our Facebook community, please check out the Bouncing Back podcast, where we continue this conversation. And I'm so excited to introduce to you today our guest, Gigi Robinson. She's a keynote speaker, she's a best-selling author, and she's a creator of a system called Hosts of Influence, which is a podcast and a training system to help other people create influence and economies in digital marketing. And it's inspired by her own journey from an early diagnosis with chronic illness. So Gigi, thank you so much. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to hear your story.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah. Do you want to just start right in with your diagnosis and how that shifted your life and kind of how that put you on this trajectory of, by force of need, creating a really different path through standard career?
Yeah, my story starts when I'm 11 years old, when I kept getting injured out of the blue, and my parents were thinking, like, what is wrong with this girl? We don't want people to think certain things. She's always getting hurt and bruised, and obviously, like, nothing bad was happening at home. It was just that I turned out to have Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, which is a hypermobility disorder in your ligaments. The way that I always describe it is if you have a hair tie and it loses its elastic, or a pair of sweatpants and it loses its elastic and it doesn't snap back like usual, that's how the ligaments and muscles in my body have been working, causing my joints to be less supported, causing more chronic pain, more dislocations, more injuries. And it started when I was about 11 years old. And once I got that diagnosis, which is pretty rare for Ehlers-Danlos to be diagnosed so early on, usually people wait, I think, over 10 years to be diagnosed.
Wow.
I was just living life, managing my symptoms, and I always was really competitive. So I was doing competitive swimming at the time. And I just decided that I would use my competitive nature to put it into something else, because I couldn't keep swimming at the pace I was doing it, or else I was going to hurt myself. So they suggested figuring something else out. So I fell into art. I loved learning about design and photography. I went to LaGuardia High School in New York City, and then continue on to University of Southern California to get my bachelor's of fine arts and master's of science. And while I was there, I was really struggling with my health. So I decided to just document my journey with my school projects and write about what I was going through, take photos and videos about it, and then present it to the class, present it on social media. And then from there, everything just grew. And like many other Gen Zers, I was 21 at the time, I think, graduating in 2020. And I remember this headline came out about how having a bachelor's of fine arts was like the most useless degree that somebody could have. And I had a decision to make. I could either listen to that and decide that I would not be hireable, that the workforce environment was going to be too challenging for me, and that I could not get a job, or I could do something about it. So I decided to make my own job. And about 2.5 years into that journey, I also went through surgery to get a diagnosis of endometriosis, which was life-changing, as well as the alpha-gal tick allergy syndrome. And since then, I've mostly been pain-free, and I would say 90% recovered from my health issues. I obviously still have flare-ups, and God forbid it comes back even worse one day. But for now, I've just been relishing in my ability in the past few years, and I really want to inspire people that at the end of a very long, decade-long search, to not be in chronic pain and to not be feeling so horrible all the time, that life after that is possible. And that's my mission right now.
Wow, that's such an amazing story. And you're right, particularly for go-getters, to not have the energy and to have your focus and energy divided by pain and have these goals for yourself and want to move forward and enthusiasm, and then your body won't show up for you is, I know for me, that's been the most frustrating part personally. And I think for a lot of people who are achievers, kudos to you for pivoting so quickly. That's just incredible. One of the struggles a lot of my viewership has is it's not unusual for people who listen to my podcast to be 10, 20 plus 25 years into a career to then have a rug pull on their business, their finances, and their identity. And sometimes at that age, I think shifting or pivoting is harder. You're locked into things, right? And I love how at such a young age, you just were like, okay, not that one, on to the next one, we'll do this. When you were vlogging about your experience and so open, I just think that's incredible. I wanted to say that. And I think more people need to do that. I think the sooner people could embrace the openness, the authenticity, and the pivot, they would stay in the struggle for a shorter amount of time.
Yeah,
I just think that's incredible.
I would agree. And I don't even think it's a hard thing. I think it's actually more of a mental thing that people have to get over. And it has to do with personal and professional development more than it has to do with actually doing the thing, because anybody can post online. Anybody can make a podcast. Anybody can write a book. The hardest part about it is starting to do it. And a majority of people will stay stuck, staying in, I should have done that earlier. I want to do that, instead of actually taking the action to do it. So I'm really big on really just gamifying my life and getting what I want out of it. And I view it as a fun game. Like when they call it the game of life, I really do try to think of it that way. So that has been really helpful to me. But if people are unwilling to do that and they want to stay stuck and miserable, then they can do that. But they're not going to be able to get a result if they don't take the action to do it. And you have to do it sometimes when it doesn't feel good. There were literally times where I would do work in my bed horizontal, but I was grateful that I had work to do and I could do it from my bed. That was the win for me. It wasn't that work was super sparse, even if it was. It was that I'm grateful to have the opportunity, and from there I can grow from it.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And it's completely mindset. Look at Stephen Hawking, right? And what he did from a wheelchair and a board and an inability to speak. So for everyone who says they can't do something, there's a handful of people who are just doing it. And you're so right too. I always tell people it's better to take inventory of what you can do instead of count off the things you can't do. And like you said, maybe you're in bed and you're horizontal and you're having to use voice text to do whatever, but at least you can do that and you have work to do. And there's blessings in that. I love what you said about gamifying. That's how I thought about mine a lot too. Okay, I'm way older than you. And I used to play War of Worldcraft. I don't know if that's even a thing anymore. But I think of that. You get stuck in a crappy place and you're kind of moving, you can't figure it out. And instead of feeling disempowered, it'd be like in a game, I'm just not figuring out what I need to figure out. Or I need to try a different tool. Or I need to collaborate with somebody. And I think that's so much more of a constructive, exploratory way to think about it that puts you in curiosity instead of disempowerment. Yeah. So that's just incredible. So thank you for that. So tell us a little bit. So you're doing like keynote speeches to all these big companies like LinkedIn. I looked at your bio. It's so extensive. And I love it that you, again, figured this out so early. I'm sorry you had the diagnosis so early, but you figured it out early. You move forward. You're all about what works, not what doesn't work. And now you're sharing that, like you said, to inspire others to the same success. What is that like when you roll in and you're a keynote speaker for a big company thing and you're dealing with these corporate people? That's got to be fun and interesting and
yeah,
different.
It is fun and interesting. I think that every single experience that I do is completely different. And a friend of mine and also a really incredible speaker, Giselle Ugarte, she always talks about how every single speech she does is different. And I think that is what makes a great speaker. They don't give the same speech every single time they open their mouth. They custom tailor each presentation, each experience to the audience and to the group that you're talking to. So even if I'm talking about the same frameworks, the different approach may be slightly nuanced and it may be different, but I'm always about connecting with the audience. And so I love making my presentations really interactive. I love hearing from people. I love hanging out with people after I am done. You will not see me usually before I go on stage because I am preparing myself to be on stage and be the best version that I could be for everybody in terms of the knowledge, in terms of the energy, in terms of how I can communicate to them and engage with them. But after that, it's all fun and games. And last week I was at a conference in Kentucky, in Covington, Kentucky, right outside of Cincinnati. And this one girl came up to me and she said how she drove 14 hours from Nebraska to see me speak. And I was like, oh, wow, the work that I'm doing actually does really impact and help people. This other guy came up to me saying he flew from New Jersey and he saw me 3 years ago at a conference and he wanted to see me again. And he was coming anyway, but he made sure in his schedule that he came for my session. And it just is a really cool opportunity because I know that the work that I'm doing lands and people are actually able to apply it to their lives and then get a brand deal because of advice that I've given, or land themselves in press, or start speaking, or start a new skill because I encouraged them to do it, not out of fear of doing it, but fear out of not doing it. I think that's a big theme that I learned with a chronic illness, right? It has never for me been about like, what can I do? I can do anything. It's what will I not be able to do if I let myself stay sick? And like that, hearing that and thinking about it that way, though it may be extreme, was what has always kept me positive and moving forward throughout my health issues. Because everybody, literally everybody always is asking me, how do you stay so positive living with health issues at such a young age and being bullied, or teachers not understanding, friends not understanding, dating was really hard. Yes, like all of those things. And what was I able to do? I was able to accomplish so much in my career during that time before I got into a relationship, before I was able to be a 2-time dog mom, before I wrote my book, before I did all this speaking stuff. I could have done any of that anyway. The thing that got me through it was thinking about, if I stay sick, what won't I be able to do in the future? And that was like an option that was like almost non-negotiable. And I'm not saying to just ignore all of your health issues, but it's like, what if you just were open to the possibility that you could heal and that your life could look different living with this health issue? And when I started approaching my life that way, better things started happening. I can't explain it any other way.
No, that makes total sense. And thinking about the opportunity cost of being sick and choosing to stay only in that frame instead of looking at the possibilities. And you're right, it's that balance. And that's something that I think about a lot, is you have to make space for what's going on with you physically. You just have to, or else you wear yourself out and you stay in flare-up cycles. But that doesn't mean there's not possibilities open to you. And even if something's not open to you today, maybe it'll be open to you next week because of a series of steps you take today. And it's just what you choose to shine your light on. You're right.
Yeah.
And one's empowering and one's disempowering. So friends and support, I know that's a challenge for people. And I would think particularly, again, with your age, sorry, I'm talking how young you are, but I'm really so inspired by you and all the things you've done. I feel like you've done more in 10 years than most of us do in a lifetime, which is wonderful. Young people a lot of times want to stay out super late. Sometimes they drink and party. They run their body out more because they can. And you're living with I don't want to use the word limitation because that's not the word. You're making different choices in your life to empower you to do different things. And that probably looks different from other people your age to some degree. How do you set boundaries for yourself? How do you create space to make sure you're able to do the things that are most important to you?
I do the things that are most important to me.
You just say no to what you don't want to do. And
yes, I'm extremely blunt. Yeah. My friends and family know that. An example of this was my birthday was on Mother's Day this year. And I originally had this whole brunch in Manhattan planned for my mom, my boyfriend's mom, my brother, his girlfriend, my dad, my mom, me. And then we had to figure out, okay, how do we deal with the dogs? And I have all of this travel coming up this summer for all these speaking gigs. So I texted everybody, hey guys, is it possible that we move this later in the day? We can go somewhere more casual, like whatever. So everyone's sure. And then I'm realizing, I'm like, hey guys, I just will not have the energy. I am literally taking 6 flights this May. I don't have the capacity. Can you guys come to where I live? And they were like, sure. And they all got in their car and they came here. And that was how we spent Mother's Day. And we went to the farmer's market. We went to a restaurant that I love. And that was it. And it was Mother's Day and it was my birthday and it was perfect. And sometimes you have this vision in your head of something being exactly a certain way and you can plan for it. And at the same time, there's talking to your friends and family, being like, hey, totally understand if this isn't going to work for you guys, but we just don't have the energy. Can we celebrate in a week, in 2 weeks? Can you come to me instead? And just overly communicating to them is what has helped me move forward, because at the end of the day, if I'm feeling like shit and I'm overwhelmed and I'm going into the city to push myself because of what I think is going to make somebody else happy, then at the end of the day, I'm not happy, and maybe I've overextended myself, which means that I could get sick or a flare up, which will affect my work dramatically if I have to get on planes and go somewhere and hype a crowd up and speak. Now, there are instances where I do have to push through that, and I do things like I skip the happy hour after the conference, or I don't go out late and I just leave early and everybody else is going to party. That's not my problem. I connect with the people I want to connect with in the day, and I'm like, see you guys, I'm going to bed. And that's just how I am. I think there's like all of this idea that we have to please other people and make other people happy. And the only person in a self-centered way that you should care about is yourself, because if you're not pouring into yourself, you can't pour into others. It's like the classic cup metaphor. If you have a completely full cup, living with a chronic illness, and people are telling you, oh, come out, and you know that's going to either completely deplete your cup or make it completely overflowing, you're not going to have enough energy to do what you actually need to do. And that's just how I am. I don't know how else to put it. I don't find it to be challenging. You will make people upset over time, and that's fine. They can get over it, or they can leave your life. I've had plenty of people in my life, mostly friends in my early to mid 20s, that couldn't hold the capacity for me saying no to things, because the context of our friendship was partying in college, or the context was going out late, or other people my age deal with this, not health related, but in terms of money, right? Some friends will just want to go out and spend, but maybe you want to go out and just go on a walk, and you bring your coffee from home, and that works for you because you're budgeting and you don't want to spend that money. And you can either communicate it to them and say, hey, I'm working on different financial goals right now. I don't want to spend more than a coffee if we're hanging out today, versus a friend that might say, oh, how about we just go grab drinks or happy hour or dinner? And you're like, okay, 1, that's at night, not going to work for me. 2, I have to commute somewhere. 3, I also have to spend $30 to $100 on dinner in New York City. I say no to these things myself, because I don't want to overextend myself financially, mentally, or physically. Because if I do that, not that I'm not a nice person, but I'm not living in my highest potential. And people around me know that. And I really do say no to commuting into the city these days. I live in the suburbs around New York, and I say no unless it is an obligation that I'm tied to because it's a friend or family that I deeply care about, or unless it's making me money. Otherwise, I don't really go to Manhattan anymore. It's just not in alignment with my goals for my mind, my body, and my business. And that is how I think about it.
No, that's wonderful. So that clarity makes it very easy to say no. And people are either on your team or they're not. And if they're not, like, letting them self-edit out of the picture is probably for the best anyway.
Yeah, so, and it doesn't have to be an emotional thing. It doesn't have to be an emotional thing. A lot of people, I think, get really wrapped up in the drama of what is going to think if I say no. It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. Do you know the average time that people forget about what they just looked at in terms of attention span? It's less than 3 seconds. It's less than 3 seconds. That means that any decision you make is likely orbiting someone's brain and going literally one ear and out the other. Nobody cares. Genuinely.
Right.
When people talk about, oh, I'm so scared to post on social media, I'm like, okay, great, but nobody cares. No offense. Nobody cares what you're posting on social media. You can build a platform. Sure, then people will care, but there's going to also be people that follow you that genuinely don't even see your content, that don't care about your content. They miss 20 out of 30 posts a month. They're only seeing 10 of your posts a month, and that's what's going to resonate with them, and that's great. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, for sure. because people are going to plug into you on their schedule. But the fact that you're there lets you be part of their life and their story, and they're plugging in. You have a podcast also. Can you tell us about that? Host of Influence. What do you cover on the podcast? How often is it like?
Yes, my show is called Creator Etiquette, and it is under my company, Host of Influence. It is all about the professional development gap in the creator economy. So what I'm talking about, right? How do you get that clarity and really implement it into your creator business so that you can make money in different ways? And sometimes I talk about investing in your time, in your personal development, in money. Sometimes I talk to executives and I'm asking them advice on if you want to become a public speaker. I'll speak to a C-suite at a speaking agency and I'll ask them advice from the community about what people can do to best optimize to get paid to be a speaker. Sometimes I'll talk to agency founders and we'll talk about their journey leaving corporate America, becoming a founder, and now paying out millions of dollars to creators. It just depends on the week episode, but I always take either personal stories that I've experienced on certain niche subjects that relate to personal growth and development within the business of creating content, or I will interview C-suite executives and senior leadership about skills that they've learned in their respective industry that creators can apply to their own business to grow professionally, because there really is no workplace for people in the creator economy that's streamlined. And that is the gap that we are really filling. And the podcast comes out every single Wednesday. And there is also a corresponding newsletter. It's just Creator Etiquette. You guys can go find it. And I absolutely love it. It's a true passion of mine. And we're also popping up at major conference hubs like New York Advertising Week, possible in Miami, Cannes Lions in France this year, at the Spotify studios in Los Angeles. So we're really hitting all these different places where real executives are, and I'm translating their executive leadership skills to people in the creator economy. And it's not exclusive to content creators. It's exclusive to anybody who wants to work on their own terms and make money on their own terms and run a business, not just create content.
I love that so much, and I'm going to start following your podcast and watching it. And I think this speaks so much to the people in this space, professionals with chronic illness, because most people are having to do some kind of a pivot. And a lot of times too, just the spiritual journey of the illness also pushes them to want to do something that's sharing, collaborative, whether it's writing a book, speaking, workshopping, this kind of thing. And as you mentioned on your website, there's often a skills gap between what corporations or companies want from creators, I'm just using the word creators in that space, and then what skill set creators need to serve that community. And I think very little information is speaking to that skill gap. So I love that. I will follow your podcast. Everybody watch her podcast. It's fantastic. And then we're coming up on our time, but you have a new project I want to be sure to touch on before we close out. And it's, tell us about it. A book.
I think the new...
I know you have so many projects.
Yeah.
So.
I was like...
You're like, which one?
On right now. I was like... Yeah, because for a while, the podcasts and newsletters was my new project. But I am in the process right now of writing another book about the skills gap in the creator world, but also living with a chronic health issue and different ways to manage your life that way. That's about as much as I can give you on it right now. But I'm not sure when it's even going to come to life. It just is out there.
And this will be your second book then, because you have a kid's book about chronic illness as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And is it to help kids understand like a parent with chronic illness, or is it for kids who have chronic illness, or both?
It can be for anybody who knows somebody or lives with a chronic health issue. It doesn't have to be kids. On the back of the book, we actually have, let me just get it because I have one right here. On the back of the book, we have these different little emojis, and it says that the book is ages 5+, and the subjects that are covered are bodies, courage, illness, and resilience. And the courage and the resilience piece was really important to me. Obviously, in talking to me, I'm sure you can tell I say what I believe, and I also believe that courage and resilience is what you need in order to start the healing process of A, coming to terms with living with a health issue, and B, owning it and doing something about it. Without those two traits, you will stay stuck in the sick part. And that's fine. A lot of people stay there actually for a while and they don't grow from it, and that's fine. There's also a podcast I'm actually a guest host for called Seen Not Fixed by a company called Spoonly Care. And in one of the upcoming episodes, I spoke with a really great friend of mine, Dr. Victoria Grinman, and we talked all about post-traumatic growth as it relates to chronic illness. So you guys should also go follow that. I'll send you the link to include if that's helpful.
Thank you.
But yeah, this book is for anyone. I could open up and read any page, and anybody should be able to understand. For example, this page, you have the power to choose how you respond to the things you go through. That is something a kid can understand and talk about with their parent, but it's also something that any adult can apply to their life. And the reason that I wanted to write this book with that tone was that I wanted anybody to be able to open any page and apply it to their life in whatever way was best for them.
Gotcha. And it opens, I used to be a teacher for a couple of years. I taught 7th grade, and those conversation starters, I was looking for a question or a comment like that to put out and then share the different perspectives. You're right. Whether it's the parent or the child are both going through, both can start to, it gives you something to open the dialogue around that and what it means to everybody. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for all the work you're putting out in the world. I'm so excited to be introduced to you and learn what you're doing and to follow you to see what you do in the future. Do you have any final words for our audience before we head out?
I think self-advocacy is the best skill that you can learn. It doesn't matter if you're in high school or middle school. Having the courage, for example, to go into the school nurse or the principal's office and give them my 504 disability form in 7th grade prepared me to do that in high school when I needed to use a wheeling backpack because I couldn't carry things because I was in pain all the time. And I had to take the elevator and explain to people why I was taking the elevator when I looked normal, which prepared me for dealing with teachers that didn't believe that I was sick in college, which prepared me for the career that I now do, where I talk to workplaces about making more inclusive work and believing the employees, but also setting the employees up for success by teaching them skills to advocate for themselves. Because if you sit there and you act all entitled about, I deserve remote work because I'm sick, nobody cares. That would be great. Everybody deserves remote work because I believe it is literally the key to helping people work more productively. But a lot of corporate environments don't believe that, and that's fine. But you need to know how to address the situation and meet your needs. And you can't do that if you don't learn how to advocate for yourself properly and in a really coherent and specific way.
Perfect. I'm going to seek out a guest, actually, who is a specialist in this. Thank you. I love that. Perfect. Thank you so much, Gigi, for your time. We'll link everything below where everybody can find you. Yeah. Website, podcast, social media, her book on Amazon, her future projects. And to my audience, thank you so much for tuning in today. Please rate, review, and share this podcast out. It helps us so much. And then we'll be back in 2 more weeks with more inspiring stories of success. So until then, keep bouncing back. If these stories of strength and comeback hit home, you'll want to hear what's next. Click the video on screen to keep learning from our incredible guests on how to bounce back and thrive.